Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Implementing PE Policies webinar. We see some people are still getting logged on, so we're just going to give them another 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to get started. Thank you for being on time, and we will be getting started very shortly. Thank you. Again, for those of you that just joined us, we're just giving our attendees a couple more minutes to finish logging on, and we'll be getting started in another moment. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's webinar on implementing PE policies. Before we get started, I want to first explain what to expect from today's webinar. So the webinar will run approximately 1 hour. A recording of the webinar will be available online. I'll be posting that on the Healthy Schools Campaign's website on our resource page, as well as I'll be sending that out in a follow-up email. If you would like to claim your CPDU, we are offering 1 hour for this webinar. In your control panel, you will see where it says the handout. I have attached the handout of the ISB evaluation form. Download that, please print it and fill it out. Send that back to me, and once you email that back to me, I'll send you a certificate of completion. Throughout the webinar, I'll be asking a couple poll questions, so please answer those as they pop up on your screen. And at the end, please take a moment to fill out the end of webinar survey. And at the end of the presentation, we'll be holding about 10 minutes for a question and answer period. You can ask questions via chat on your screen. I'll be able to pull those up. Send them to me at any point in time during the webinar if you have questions, and we'll try to get to those at the end. It is located in the same control panel where you see the handout. So let me start off by introducing myself. My name is Kenneth Varner. I am the Community Engagement Coordinator with Healthy Schools Campaign. I've been with the organization for about 3 years. I focus on working with parents to give them the tools to advocate on behalf of their children to create healthier school environments. I also work with schools by providing technical assistance to create healthier environments by implementing the district's wellness policies. Before I was in this position, I worked in a school in Chicago Southside as a health coordinator / wellness champion, where I took students on field trips to get classes, coordinated a monthly mobile dental van, and promoted monthly health challenges. And also, I'm a graduate of the University of Illinois at Chicago. Now that I've introduced myself, I'd like to know who's joining us on this webinar. This will allow us to be mindful of the position that you're in when we're presenting you this information. So my first question for you is going to be, which title best describes your role in the school system? So I'm going to give you a moment to answer that. Please click as many that is a describer of you, and then I'll give you another moment to do that. And while you are doing that, I'm going to tell you about Healthy Schools Campaign. Healthy Schools Campaign is a local nonprofit that works on local and national issues around school health. We believe healthy students are better learners, and we work hard to make changes at the local, state, and national levels. We've worked with CPS to offer healthier school food and advocate for the return of recess. We've encouraged school districts to use green cleaning products, as well as hosted healthy cooking contests across the city. We're really trying to find ways to engage administrators, staff, teachers, parents, and students to help encourage them to be more healthy. All right, so that was Healthy Schools Campaign. Going to go ahead and close this poll now. All right, it looks like we have some of you that are administrators, we have PE teachers, classroom teachers, wellness team members are here as well. Thank you all very much for joining us today, and we will try to keep your positions in mind as we are presenting our information to you. So I talked about who I am, Healthy Schools Campaign, but what is a healthy school? I like to think of it as a school that provides wraparound services in an environment that addresses the non-academic barriers to learning. It's a school that provides services such as dental and vision screenings and treatment, as well as mental health support. Basically, it's a school that considers the whole child when making decisions on how to best educate them. Moreover, it's a school that instills healthy habits in students that lay the foundation for a long, healthy life by teaching them to value their bodies and normalizes making healthy choices. And before I hand it over to my colleague that has joined us today, I want to set the table by explaining why physical education and physical activity are so important. Here we have the whole school, whole community, whole child framework. This model was developed by the CDC and the Association for Supervision and Curriculum to strengthen a comprehensive approach to improve learning and health in schools. This framework takes into account the many different components that are necessary when educating a student. Notice that in the center of the graphic that you have the child. The student is the focal point for all those involved and is part of their own learning. Moving outward from that child, you have the student's basic needs. We cannot expect optimal growth in anyone whose basic needs are not met. So if that child does not feel safe or isn't healthy due to a chronic health condition or vision or dental issues, that child is less likely to meet their full academic potential. The next layer of support is where you'll find the 10 components that the CDC has identified as being necessary for a healthy environment. The component that we'll, of course, be discussing today is going to be the physical education and physical activity component. With more priorities that are added to a school's list, one can imagine how PE can fall lower and lower on that list of priorities. However, we see that here that PE has been identified as an essential part of a student's development. And within that component, we have the Comprehensive School Physical Activity Program. Schools play a vital role in ensuring children and adolescents get the nationally recommended 60 minutes of physical activity each day. Just keeping in mind, students students are looking for the school environment to provide those opportunities for physical activity. Many students live in neighborhoods where they do not get physical activity otherwise due to, for one, we're in Chicago, so there's the weather condition that can keep you inside, and as well as there may be safety issues in neighborhoods. So I know in my family, my family members get home from school and they're pretty much indoors for the rest of the day, just because of what's going on outside in the neighborhoods. And I imagine that that situation is repeated across the city. So much like we have students that are leaning on the school to provide like food throughout the day, we have students that are leaning on the schools to provide those opportunities for physical activity. In addition to that, physical education provides students with the opportunity to learn key concepts and skills that can lead to active lifestyles throughout childhood and into adulthood. PE also has positive impacts on physical, mental, and emotional health. In that regard, a quality physical education program can be used to help address other priorities in your school, priorities such as attendance and test scores. Health issues are a leading cause of chronic absenteeism. School-based physical activity programs have been shown to improve attendance by increasing school connectedness and by favorably affecting the health status of children with asthma. In addition, higher physical fitness achievement is associated with better school attendance rates and fewer disciplinary incidents. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Healthy People 2020 National Objectives calls for schools to increase the proportion of students who meet the recommended 60 minutes of physical activity each day and who participate in daily physical education and other physical activity opportunities such as recess and after-school activities. Ensuring students have the opportunity to be physically active for 60 minutes a day is a key strategy for supporting student attendance. Here is a graphic that shows the prevalence of CPS students that are overweight or obese. This is a study that is coming from the 2010-2011 school year. We know from studies that 43% of CPS students were reported to either be overweight or obese. As seen from the chart, you can see the neighborhoods with the highest prevalence of obesity. Those are going to be the neighborhoods that are the darker blue color. Those are the same neighborhoods that have the least income and the highest prevalence of crime in their area. It is proven that if a child is overweight or obese, it's proven that if a child is overweight or obese in childhood, they'll grow up to be overweight or obese as an adult. And I'm sure we are aware of the health issues that are associated with being overweight. And as a person's life expectancy can be heavily determined by the neighborhood in which they live. So if you take me, Kenneth Varner, if I was growing up on the west side of Chicago, let's say the North Lawndale neighborhood, I would have a certain life expectancy. And if you take the same person, same Kenneth Varner, and just move me to another neighborhood, let's say the lighter shaded areas, let's say Lincoln Park, my life expectancy can go up by 11 years. And just thinking about what I was mentioning earlier about students not having the opportunity for physical activity or to live a healthy lifestyle, just depending on where they are living in the city. And I'm a strong believer that every child deserves to live a long and healthy life, regardless of the zip code in which they are raised. So looking at this map, we'll quickly see how this is not only an issue of academics, but is also a social justice issue as you see where the neighborhoods fall, where these situations are most prevalent. Healthy students are better learners. In a report, Charles Bass clearly stated that no matter how well teachers are prepared to teach, no matter what accountability measures are put in place, no matter what governing structures are established for schools, educational progress will be profoundly limited if students are not motivated and able to learn. Health-related problems play a major role in limiting the motivation and ability to learn. While schools cannot address all of the conditions that cause educational or health disparities, there are evidence-based and promising approaches that can be applied to address health issues of students and ensure that they are able to learn and be successful. So if we take a closer look at that evidence, we'll see that specific physical activity practices are linked to different aspects of academic achievement. On the left, you will see the specific physical activity practice, and on the right, you will see the related academic outcome. Those outcomes associated with physical activity are better grades, better attendance, better classroom behaviors, fewer disciplinary problems, higher GPAs, and lower dropout rates. And for those of you that are learners like myself, you'll see here this is a composite of 20 students' brains after taking the same test. This shows that after physical activity, your brain is more engaged. That is why we also advocate for brain breaks and movement minutes to be incorporated into the school day. Not only does it give the student an emotional break from the lesson, but it invigorates them and can lead to better academic performance. CPS has developed four main policies that go into their wellness policy. On the next slide, I've extracted elements from the policies that speak directly to physical education and physical activity. If you're not familiar with these policies, please go online and check these out to familiarize yourself with that. So the requirements that I was alluding to, here they are. My school provides daily physical education classes, or the equivalent of 150 minutes a week throughout the school year. My school provides at least 20 minutes of daily recess. My school allows students and families in the larger community to use indoor and outdoor space during non-school hours. And students are neither denied nor required to engage in physical activity as a means of punishment. So those are going to be some of the requirements that you'll find in the wellness policy. Hopefully I've done a good job in explaining why physical education and physical activity is so important. And I've given you some tools to help you advocate for its inclusion in the school day. But what does a good quality physical education program look like? Because simply scheduling the amount of minutes isn't enough. For example, putting go to the gym on your calendar doesn't by itself help you reach your personal health goals. And going to the gym and aimlessly walking from one exercise machine to the next doesn't get you there either. So today we have Yara Satyan from CPS Department of Health and Physical Education to explain what goes into a quality PE program. So with that, I'll be handing it over.
Thank you, Kenneth. I think anytime we have an opportunity to work together through community events like this, it just is something that just strengthens not only physical education, but physical activity and wellness as a whole. So I wanted to spend about 20 minutes kind of talking about what physical education in Chicago Public Schools looks like. We try to model high quality physical education around what is considered high quality physical education nationally. There's these four components that go into what quality physical education should look like, and I will kind of go briefly into those in a little more detail in just a minute. We are the Department of Health and Physical Education. So we are a new department. We have been around for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in August. There's two physical education specialists, so myself and Erin Reed, and Eileen Hare is the Health and Physical Education Manager. One really interesting thing about our department is that in the past, we were with Sports Administration, we were in the Office of Student Health and Wellness, and in August, we were really just changed into the Department of Teaching and Learning. And so we are with the other core classes. We are with arts, we are with STEM, we are with literature and literacy, music, and so we are now considered as we always should have been, and we always were, but we're now with the Office of Teaching and Learning. A little bit about me. I worked at Belding Elementary in Network 1 for 3 years before taking this position. I am a Husky, so I'm a graduate of the Northern Illinois University. I have a couple publications, and I'm really interested. My personal work has always been with English language learners and teaching in an urban community. So I've really found a home here with CPS. The CPS Physical Education Policy was adopted in January of 2014. And there's a lot of different parts to it, but what I really wanted to kind of focus on was the first two sections. So it is on the instruction of physical education and a little bit on scheduling. If you can pull up a separate screen and you kind of want to follow along, you can go to tinyurl.com/CPSP administration. It's going to take you to our main administration page, and under policies, you will see the physical education policy. This is only available through a cps.edu email. But if you're interested, you could always email me and I could send that policy to you as well. So the main thing I wanted to focus on was the physical education instruction. It states that all schools shall provide every elementary and high school student with high quality physical education instruction that is, so then it goes on to kind of describe what it looks like. It should be provided daily to both elementary and high school students. It should be led by a teacher who meets the qualification requirements. So we want it established by a certified teacher in the state of Illinois. It should have a standards-based curriculum, and we'll talk about all of these in a little bit. It should be informed by regular and varied assessment. It should have a comprehensive and transparent grading criteria. It's inclusive to all diverse learners, all abilities, all fitness levels, ethnicities, and genders. And we want to be evaluated in the same way that other teachers are evaluated. So those are the main parts to component A, part A. Part B does go into the scheduling, which I know we're going to talk about. Grades K through 8, elementary schools shall provide 150 minutes or 30 minutes daily of physical education. So if you're not able to provide it 30 minutes daily, we want the equivalent of 150 minutes per week. On top of that, it is recommended that elementary schools in grades 6 through 8 should have up to 225 average minutes of physical education. In high school, grades 9 through 12, again effective with the start of 2014-2015, schools should be scheduling physical education courses in each grade level in the same amount of minutes as other content areas. So if you have a 50-minute math class, you should have a 50-minute physical education class daily. So when we talk about quality physical education and what does it look like, we really have to differentiate between what is physical activity, what is exercise, and what is physical education. I can walk into a gym and see a teacher, and the students are moving around and they're running, and they're happy and they're busy, and that's good, but what is the actual learning component that comes along with it? If a student is just doing bodily movement, if all they're doing is breaking up a sweat, that's pretty much just physical activity. Exercise then is any physical activity that is planned, it's structured, so as opposed to me just walking leisurely, now I'm walking 2 blocks in less than 5 minutes, there's usually some sort of time component that kind of separates physical activity and exercise. When you talk about physical education, it is sequential, it is planned, there's a heavy assessment that's involved, there are grade level outcomes, and it's really based on the standards that we have developed and adopted here at CPS through ISB and nationwide. And so we have the Illinois state goals, and we actually adopt the national standards. So we have these two different agencies, but the goals are basically the same. As a department, we like to focus on the national standards a lot, the Shape America standards. But the Illinois state standards, obviously, we align to as well. And so there's 5 standards, which I'm going to talk about briefly. So in Standard 1 really focuses on skill acquisition. So these are the actual motor skills that the students are learning. So in grades K through 2, they're learning movement concepts. So at a high level, at a low level, they're learning to zigzag. They're skipping and learning these locomotor movements. When you move on to Standard 2, that really comes with the knowledge of those skills themselves. So they're understanding what they're doing with their bodies, how their body works. In older grades, they're learning strategies to games and really understanding how games should be developed, how to develop lessons as far as like fitness training, how to create your own goals as an adult, and as a student, how to set goals. That more aligns with Standard 3, which is more on being physically fit itself. This is where students are learning to set goals, making nutrition plans, and really understanding and taking ownerships of their bodies. Standard 4 is personal and social responsibility. So this is how they are learning to cooperate within classes. Are they putting equipment away properly? Are they demonstrating self-awareness when they're moving in open space? These are all have to do with Standard 4. And finally, Standard 5, if you are doing Standards 1 through 4, then you should be able to value physical education. Now at Standard 5, you have the confidence, you've learned the skills, you understand why games are played, you are physically fit, you're a good team member, and so you're able to then value physical activity, physical education for challenge, for joy, and I think there's other things that are mentioned in Standard 5. Moving along, so as a district, one of the very first things we did as a department is we really took those standards, state standards, international standards, and we wanted to create transfer goals. So when you think of a transfer goal, you are thinking, what do we want from our students in 15, 10, 15 years, 20 years? What do we want from our students for the future? This is where you really kind of take that learning component out of the acute physical activity that's happening for those 50, 60 minutes. It takes it even further. So independently, we want students to be able to do 3 things. Number 1, we want them to participate in an active and healthy lifestyle with competence and confidence. So if you look at the 2 words, competence and confidence, they have to not only possess the skills, but they have to be confident in their abilities to do it so that they can then independently continue to do that on their own. Number 2, work and collaborate effectively while respecting self and others. Again, if I am a member of a team, a physical activity team, whether it's on a tennis team or bowling or basketball team, I have to be able to work and collaborate together with others, respecting myself, set goals, to be able to, again, value that physical education, to be able to do it as an adult. And finally, we want them to self-select physical activity for enjoyment and satisfaction. And when we talk about satisfaction, some people find challenge as satisfying. Some people set goals, some people do it for social interaction, but we want them to just select any physical activity as adults for enjoyment and satisfaction on their own. So when you talk about the classroom, what does quality physical education look like? So SHAPE, which is a Society of Health and Physical Educators, created these 4 components of what high quality physical education should look like. So number 1, we have policy and environment. Number 2, we have curriculum. 3, we have appropriate instruction. And 4, we have student assessment. So we'll talk briefly about policy and environment and what that looks like in physical education. So number 1, and this is actually aligns with everything that's in the PE policy. Do you have a certified physical education teacher? We don't want, substitutes in teaching. We don't want cadres. We don't want classroom teachers that are certified to teach. We want teachers basically to teach physical education that have taken the heavy workload that we know it is. We're taking science classes and biomechanics and physiology and pedagogy. We want our students being taught by certified physical educators. Number 2, classes are taught in appropriate spaces to greatest extent possible. So again, you wouldn't ask a math teacher to teach in a hallway. So we want ideally to have physical education taught in either a classroom for the classroom component or a gym that has adequate space. And we'll talk a little bit about the limitations to that momentarily, but ideally, when possible, we want classes taught in appropriate spaces. School is achieving 150 minutes a week of PE per board policy. So again, that equals to about 30 minutes a day or 150 minutes a week. Or if you do block schedules, as long as by the end of the year it's 150 minutes a week, we really want that average. But knowing that, as Kenneth mentioned earlier, the best way is to have 60 minutes of physical activity daily. So when possible, again, we want to adhere to that. 4, the PE teacher ensures the inclusion of all students and makes necessary adaptations, modifications for diverse learners. And so we want, ideally, all students to participate in physical education, all students to go into the aquatic pool when it's available, all students participating in games, and that's something that certified physical education teachers, through our training in college, we went through adaptive physical education classes, so we're very well prepared to make those modifications for our diverse learners. And finally, PE class size is consistent with that of other subject areas. And so making sure that if you have a classroom of 30 students in physical education, that equals with that of math, science, literacy, just so that they're consistent with that of the other subject areas. So we're going to move on to curriculum. Curriculum is something that as a district we're really working really hard to create. There's always been a scope and sequence at Chicago Public Schools, but now we are starting to create units. We started a K-2 unit pilot. We are in the process of writing a 3.5, and hopefully in the future we can have something out for everyone to use. If you are a CPS teacher, you are able to access curriculum that is being piloted right now, just to use as a guide on the CPS Knowledge Center. But again, we want our curriculum to be based on national, state standards and grade level outcomes. So you have a third grade student that is learning the underhand catch, and as a third grader, it's going to look different than as a second grader. As a first grader, it's going to look different than as a fifth grader. So we want it to be sequential, we want it to be comprehensive, and we want it to be rigorous for our students as well. So next we have appropriate instruction. And when we talk about appropriate instruction in high quality physical education, so teachers are using instructional practices and deliberate practice tasks to support the goals of objectives defined in the curriculum. So again, lessons are being written every day. They're differentiated for each individual student. There's a lot of student ownership that is involved in physical education. Students have roles. They're gathering equipment. They're working together as teams. They're reflecting. They're doing peer evaluations. They are, discussing strategies with team members during timeouts. We really want things to be deliberate. We want them to be aligned with the goals and objectives of both the national scope and sequence and our scope and sequence here at CPS. Moving on to number 2, the teacher is evaluating student learning continually to document and inform teacher effectiveness. So again, you are in a classroom and your students are performing. How are you communicating to your students how they are going as far as the grade level outcomes? How are you assessing them? How are they assessing themselves? How do they know how physically fit they are? And things along those lines. The PE teacher employs instructional practices that engage students in moderate to vigorous activity for at least 50% of the time. And so, of course, this is a physical education class, so they should be moving at least 50% of the time, moderate to vigorous, and really understanding not only why they're moving, but, they're understanding why they're moving. It's not just go run 4 laps. It's more or less, why does running 4 laps, why is this something that I should do and enjoy and value so I can continue to do it as an adult? Finally, the PE teacher ensures the inclusion of all students and makes necessary adaptations. And you see this one here again, because again, if you want to have appropriate instruction, you want to engage all students, you really have to plan prior to that for all students so that you're including all students. And next we have student assessment. So what that looks in physical education is, again, it's aligned to national state standards and it's established grade level outcomes. So SHAPE has this wonderful K-12 grade level outcome document that they came out with. And you can go through and you go through every standard and it tells you what students should be accomplishing at what grade level. So again, an underhand throw is going to look different for a 3rd grader than a 4th grader. For standard 2 in high school, they are learning different formations for net games. They are really understanding how games work. But again, looking at those to guide the way that you create your lessons is really a backwards planning at its best, and the way that physical education kind of should be taught. So again, student assessment includes evidence-based practices that measure student achievement in all areas of instructions, including physical fitness. And finally, grading relates directly to student learning objectives and then identified in the written physical education curriculum. So here are a few examples of assessments. So we have formative assessments, which should be done throughout. So are they doing class discussions? It's a real simple check-in, check-out, questionnaires, self-evaluations. I know, for example, when I was teaching, I had students assess their rate of perceived exertion, and so on their way out, they would simply just tap a chart that let me know how hard they thought their body moved that day. But it was helpful for them to be able to self-evaluate and kind of check themselves and say, hey, I wasn't able to work out as much this time around. I'm going to make it a goal to work out a little bit harder next time or give a little bit more effort. For summative, we have performance tasks, projects, portfolios, written assessments, rubrics. And again, this looks very similar to what is happening in other content areas, and we want to make sure that to deliver high quality physical education, that we are held to the same expectations, especially now that we're in the Office of Teaching and Learning. We should be held in the same expectations of the other content areas because we are in the same department as other content areas. We are saying we are just as important as the math and the literacy, and assessment really helps drive that. It helps drive students, what students know and are able to do. So this is kind of just a quick chart that shows you the difference between what is more of an activity-based or traditional physical education, for lack of a better word, and what quality physical education looks like. One thing to notice about this is physical education has changed tremendously throughout the years. So you're talking about the history of physical education. Physical education came about right after World War II, and when really the idea behind physical education was to get men and women prepared to join the military and to get them in shape. That turned into a very sport-based kind of a program, and even 4 or 5 years ago when I was in grad school, it was very high, moderate, vigorous activity, which while it is great, we want to also focus on the teaching component and the teaching that comes behind physical education. So we want students moving, we want them to be physically active, but we also want them to understand what they're doing. We want it to be standards-based, we want there to be assessment, and that it's developmentally appropriate. So strategies to maximizing quality physical education. One thing I recommend is that you be innovative with your space. And so I gave the example of someone teaching, in the hallway. While that is not ideal, I think being innovative, being creative, looking for resources online, reaching out to our department, it's something that can it's a barrier that we can overcome together. We've mentioned hallway space, we've mentioned auditorium spaces, we've mentioned cafeterias, multi-purpose room. When you are available to go in outdoor spaces, is that an option for you? Can you go outdoors? But overall, we want to continue to deliver those grade level outcomes in the space that's provided. And again, feel free to reach out to our department for ideas. We're always welcome to come out and pay a visit as well, just to help brainstorm on how we can maximize space if space is an issue. Keep open communication with administration. One of the things that I really did when I first started teaching at my school was I worked with my administration almost all the time. And so I would advocate and say, we need more space, we want physical education to be valued. This is a cool idea I have for an after school program. Let's start a wellness fair. And so it took a little bit of work for me to get buy-in from my administration, but once they understood that a healthy student leads to better academic scores, a healthy student means that they're attending classes more often, they are more attentive, there's less behavioral problems. When you have a quality physical education program, that is kind of the start. All of that other stuff is going to become very easy after that. Students are going to start participating in more after-school activities. You're going to see them playing games during recess more often. And so we really want to start with a quality physical education component because it really is going to drive the wellness policy and the nutrition and kind of some of the other things that are just as important as well. I would say take advantage of professional opportunities, both through our department, professional organizations, through the Healthy School campaigns, other vendors, because what they're doing is we have research-based stuff that's really out there and that it's working, and we want to be able to empower teachers to kind of take ownership and try some of those stuff, take risks in their school. And finally, we want you to really be the face of health and physical education. Again, I want to bring it back to my experience. When I walked into my school, my goal was to change the culture of physical education and to really get everyone to understand how important being healthy and being well is. I always say when I am talking about health and physical education, if you talk to any adults and you ask them to name a New Year's resolution that they had either this year or last year or the year before, so many times it's something that is related to health and wellness. I want to stop smoking, I want to eat better, I want to exercise. And that really shows you how important health and wellness, mental wellness, body, spiritual, all of that is important. And the sooner we get the students to understand that, it's going to help the parents understand it better. It's going to help teachers, staff communities just come around health and wellness. And so being the face of it, being the go-to person, volunteering to be the wellness champion, going to after-school events really helps with quality physical education and kind of changing that culture of health and PE. With that said, I know I had a lot of information, so please follow up with any questions. Our email is physicaleducation@cps.edu. Feel free to also email me personally at ymsantian@cps.edu, but most people know me as the email lady, so you probably have gotten emails from me in the past and know how to reach out to me. But again, I wanted to thank Kenneth for just allowing me the opportunity to come in and kind of talk about something that I'm really passionate about, and that's getting kids to be healthy, both as students but also as adults. So thanks, Kenneth.
Thank you very much for being here. I sincerely, greatly appreciate you being here. That was a lot of great information. We did touch on a few barriers that you identified, but I did have a question for our attendees. What are your biggest concerns in implementing a quality PE? Like, are there any barriers to doing so? So I'm going to launch this poll to get you to actually answer that question. Just a moment. So if you could please answer this poll question. What are your biggest concerns in implementing quality PE? Are you having scheduling issues, student participation, adult buy-in, staffing? I know Yara spoke to a few of those concerns, so we wanted to see if you're dealing with any of those currently. Yes, and choose all. You don't have to just choose one, choose all that are concerning you. All right, so I'm going to give you another couple of seconds to give the last people some time to answer that. All right, thank you for your responses. I'm going ahead and closing that poll now. It looks like the vast majority of you see scheduling as an issue. About half of you see student participation as an issue. Adult buy-in and staffing coming in at a tie for third. So I'll try to do my best to address some of those concerns. However, I do not work in a school building, and each school is unique, so I can do the best I can do is give you some examples of wellness champions and PE teachers that I work with, as well as other schools. Yara, if you have any place where you want to jump in, please do so. And to all our attendees of the webinar, if you have any specific questions, please chat to us and we can answer those if you have any specific concerns. So please do that now and we can try to get to it. I'll jump in and then Yara, you can come in. As far as like scheduling, I was speaking to a PE teacher recently, and they were talking about utilizing other teachers' prep time in order to get to like the 150 minutes. They're using other teachers' prep time to do the health education. So that PE teacher was able to go into other to take the students during that prep period, whether they're supposed to be in like computer lab or in the library, and using that time to do like sex ed or nutrition or something, so that way it wasn't taking away from the actual physical education / physical activity time going on in the gym. That is one way to approach some of the scheduling. Yara, did you have anything that you want to jump in?
I mean, I think, first of all, it's with a district that's so large, it's really hard to implement a policy where, you can have 400 schools that are, look exactly the same. We all know that even from school to school, network to network, it's going to look different. I would say continue to work with administration on finding creative ways to have scheduling. I know we talked a lot about 60 minutes of physical education. So the 150 minutes, 60 of those minutes can be health education, which can be in the classroom. It can be second step, which a lot of the times is taught by the classroom teacher, 30 minutes a week to kind of add into that. There's a way to incorporate dance component in it, because I know there was a lot of issues with, you know, hey, we're meeting our physical education policy, but now we're having to meet our arts education policy, and so a lot of schools have combined and hired a dance teacher who can now fulfill both physical education and the arts education minutes. We can always schedule, you know, meetings coming out to your school and actually looking at your schedule. But I think the number one thing is to really just look at your prep hours, look at your, you know, math minutes that are required, your literacy minutes, and just finding I know schools that are doing 15 minutes, you know, in the morning and then 15 minutes in the afternoon. And while that's not ideal, again, knowing that there are ways to do it, and it is hard, but it can be done.
Excellent. So are there any other, any specific questions? We can go right into our Q&A part. Does anyone have any questions about what was just shared with you? Anything throughout the webinar, or about any other barriers or concerns that you may have? Please let us know at this time.
And I know it wasn't mentioned prior to, but the sexual health education policy minutes, that actually counts as well as health education, and so you are able to kind of fulfill the sexual health education policy minutes as well as the health education policy minutes at the same time.
Right, so as you see at the bottom of this graphic, the health education minutes, the 60 minutes can be your sex ed, your nutrition education, as well as the social emotional learning education that you'll be doing in your school as well. All right, so I think we have answered the questions that you may have. Again, if anything else comes up, you can contact us at another time. I just wanted to share this partner list with you. If you are looking for a partner to help you with providing physical activity in your school, as well as any nutrition education, these are a list of partners that have already been vetted by CPS and actually are working with schools in the CPS system already. So you can reach out to any of these partners to see if there's a possible partnership with your school. And then here is a resource page. You have the Healthy CPS homepage. You have our Healthy Schools Campaign Resource Center. You have the Learn Well Toolkit. There's alternatives to denying physical activity, and the Fit to Learn resource page. That is from Healthy Schools Campaign. That'll show you how to incorporate physical activity into lesson plans. So please look through all of those, and I will be sharing the slide deck with you in a follow-up email. And then also, to stay connected, you can always reach out to me, Kenneth, at healthyschoolscampaign.org. And if you want to claim your CPDU, please email me the completed form from the handouts. Fill out the ISB evaluation form. Once you send that back to me at this email address, I'll then send you your certificate of completion. And again, if you needed to contact the Department of Health and Physical Education, please reach out to that email as well, and you will be able to speak directly with the email lady. She is a person. Yes, and with that, thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay warm.
Thanks again.